Okay. So if now we are going to see with the scalp. Scalp is a term derived from Scandinavian language. It is called sheath. Scalper equal to sheath. So we are going to see under the following headings. So we are going to see about the extent of the scalp, what are the layers, blood supply, venous drainage, lymphatics, nerve supply, applied anatomy, and scalp avulsion injuries. Okay. So first we'll see about definition of the scalp. What is scalp? So scalp is a soft tissue which covers the calvaria of the scalp. So what is calvaria? Calvaria is the topmost portion of the scalp, is called as the calvaria. So scalp is a soft tissue which covers the calvaria of the scalp. Okay. So if you see the extent of the scalp, so it extends from front of the forehead, that is top of the forehead in front to the superior nuchal line behind here. Okay, so you can see it extends from the forehead to the superior nuchal line. So this is in a layman term. If you see exactly the bony extension of the scalp, so anteriorly it extends from supraorbital margin and posteriorly it extends up to external occipital protuberance and superior nuchal line. Okay, and laterally it extends up to zygomatic arch and external acoustic meatus. Okay, once again I am repeating. So extension anteriorly it extends up to supraorbital margin, posteriorly it extends up to external occipital protuberance and superior nuchal line, and laterally it extends up to zygomatic arch and external acoustic meatus. Okay. Now we are going to see about the 5 layers of the scalp. So you have to remember the scalp, each letter. So the 5 layers starts with this letter. So scalp, first letter is S. So the first layer of the scalp is the skin. The next letter is C. So C is the nothing but the connective tissue or subcutaneous tissue. That is the second layer. So third layer, the letter starts with A. So A is the aponeurosis. So that is next to the, so you will have, you know that next to the skin you have superficial fascia, then deep fascia. So the superficial fascia is nothing but the connective tissue or subcutaneous tissue. The deep fascia is the third layer, so which is called epicranial aponeurosis. It consists of muscle that is called occipitofrontalis muscle. Okay. So the fourth layer of the scalp starts with the letter L, that is the loose areolar tissue. And the fifth layer starts with the letter P, that is the pericranium. I think you are clear with the 5 layers and you have to remember SCALP. Okay. So see this picture. So this is the first layer skin. Next is the connective tissue or superficial fascia. And next layer is the epicranial aponeurosis. The fourth layer is the loose areolar tissue. And the fifth layer is the pericranium. Okay. So pericranium is nothing but the periosteum of the skull. So now we are going to see detailing about the each layer. First we'll see about the skin. So you know the skin of the scalp. If you compare the skin of the other area and the skin of the scalp is very thick and it is hairy. It is provided with numerous hair and it is adherent to the third layer. It is adherent to the third layer through superficial fascia. Okay. And the skin is provided with more number of sweat and sebaceous gland. So it consists of more number of sweat and sebaceous gland. That's why the sebaceous gland, if it gets infected or blocked, this results in a condition called sebaceous cyst. You can see the sebaceous cyst of the scalp. Okay, so sebaceous cyst is the commonest site here is the scalp is the commonest site for the sebaceous cyst. Okay. So the next layer will go on to the next layer, that is the superficial fascia or connective tissue. Okay. So if you see this is the connective tissue layer. Okay. So it connects the skin to the underlying epicranial aponeurosis. Okay. So it is dense in the center and it is fibrous at the periphery. It is more fibrous and dense in the center than the periphery, and it provides medium for the passage of blood vessels. You can see numerous blood vessels, arteries and veins in the connective tissue. And this blood vessel, the wall of the blood vessel is adherent to the fascia. That's why if the scalp is torn in any injury, so there will be severe bleeding will be there. So you have to compress the scalp to arrest the bleeding. It's a very important clinical feature of the superficial fascia. Okay. So wounds bleed profusely because these blood vessels are adherent to the wall of the fibrous tissue. Okay. And bleeding should be started by applying pressure against the bone. Okay. And usually the subcutaneous hemorrhage is not extensive. Since the fascia is dense, it usually will be arrested by applying pressure. Okay, I think you're clear with the superficial fascia. And the inflammation of the scalp in the superficial fascia also causes little swelling, but it will be more painful. You have experienced this. If you are hitting in the wall, the scalp is hitting in the wall, means it will be more painful and you will get immediate swelling. That is because of the injury to the blood vessels in the superficial fascia. Okay. So next we'll go on to the third layer. Third layer is the epicranial aponeurosis. So you can see in this picture, this green color one is the epicranial aponeurosis. It is a sheet of fibrous tissue, so which is movable on the skull. Okay, and it is movable on the pericardium. So it connects two muscles. In the front, you can see the frontal belly of occipitofrontalis. In the behind, you can see the occipital belly of the occipitofrontalis. So anteriorly, it receives the insertion of the frontal muscle, and posteriorly, it receives the insertion of the occipitalis muscle. Okay. If you see the attachment of the epicranial aponeurosis, on each side, it is attached to the superior temporal line, and it sends down an extension which crosses superficially over the temporal fascia, and it will be attached to the zygomatic arch. Okay, so although its actual attachment on the lateral side is superior temporal line, but it sends down a prolongation which will be attached to the zygomatic arch. So if you see in the front anteriorly, it sends a small prolongation between the frontal belly and it will be attached to the subcutaneous tissue of the face. Posteriorly, it sends down a prolongation between the two occipital belly. In the next picture, you can see it sends down a prolongation between two occipital belly, and it will be attached to the external occipital protuberance and highest nuchal line. So highest nuchal line is nothing but a line which is located just above the superior nuchal line. So it is not always present, but sometimes this highest nuchal line will be present. Okay. I think you are clear about the attachment of the epicranial aponeurosis. Next, we'll see the content of the epicranial aponeurosis. It consists of two muscles. They are called epicranius muscle. So one is the occipitofrontalis, and another one is the temporoparietalis. So this occipitofrontalis, I said it consists of two bellies. So these are the two bellies. You can see the frontal belly in the forehead and occipital belly in the norma occipitalis. Okay. So if you see the origin of the occipital belly, it arises from the highest nuchal line, lateral part of highest nuchal line. It is inserted into epicranial aponeurosis, and the nerve supply from the facial nerve, posterior branch of facial nerve. The main action of this muscle is it moves the scalp backward. Okay, you can try. Okay. And next we'll see the frontal belly of occipitofrontalis. In this picture, this is the frontal belly. So it is attached, arises from the skin of the forehead and inserted into the epicranial aponeurosis here. And the nerve supply is by the temporal branch of facial nerve. Again, it is supplied by facial nerve only. So which is the seventh cranial nerve, which supplies the entire muscles of the face. And if you see the action of the frontalis muscle, it moves the scalp forward and it raises the eyebrows and causes horizontal wrinkles of the skin of the forehead. Okay, I think you are clear with the attachment of the occipitofrontalis muscle. And if you see the nerve supply of muscle, you can see here, this is the temporal band supplying the frontalis muscle, posterior auricular band supplying the occipital belly. Not only it supplies occipital belly, it supplies the muscles around the auricle here. Okay. So next muscle which is present in the epicranial aponeurosis is the temporoparietalis. So it arises from epicranial aponeurosis, inserted into the root of the auricle. Actually, this muscle is well developed in dogs. You have noticed, I think dog, have you noticed all that dog will move the auricle up and down. Okay. So this is also supplied by the temporal branch of facial nerve, and main function is it raises the auricle. Okay. So next come to the fourth layer. The fourth layer is called as the loose areolar tissue. It starts with the letter L. Okay. So it extends anteriorly into the eyelid. Since the muscle doesn't have any bony attachment, this loose areolar tissue will extend into the eyelid. Posteriorly, it is attached to highest and superior nuchal line, and each side to the superior temporal line. And the main feature here is it gives passage to emissary veins. And this fourth layer is called as the dangerous area of the scalp. So you can see the emissary veins. So the emissary veins are veins which connect the intracranial veins, that is venous sinuses, with extracranial veins. You can see this is the emissary vein, so which is present in the loose areolar tissue of the scalp. Okay. And you can see here the emissary vein. So this is the intracranial venous sinus. So see, it opens into intracranial venous sinus. In the other part, it is connected to extracranial veins. Okay. And one important applied aspect here is black eye or periorbital ecchymosis. Okay. So I said there is no attachment, bony attachment for the loose areolar tissue. That's why any blow to the skull, or if you hit your skull on the wall or accidentally in the bus while traveling, so what happened? The blood will leak and there will be generalized swelling affecting the whole dome of the skull. Since frontalis muscle has no bony attachment here, the blood will slowly gravitate into the eyelid and it looks like black eye, or this condition is called periorbital ecchymosis. This usually will spontaneously will be subsiding. Okay, no treatment is necessary, only you have to do some ice fomentation. Okay, so why this fourth layer is called dangerous layer of the face? I said this emissary veins connects extracranial veins with intracranial venous veins. So that's why any infection outside will be transmitted to the brain through emissary vein. So that's why the loose areolar tissue is called as the dangerous area of the scalp. Okay. And one more applied aspect related to this is the caput succedaneum or scalp edema. Sometimes there will be collection of the serosaginous fluid in the second layer, connective tissue layer. This is mainly due to interference of venous return. This occurs mainly during childbirth. So during normal delivery, the baby's head will pass through the vagina, that is smaller female pelvis. So it will have some natural obstruction will be there. Because of this, there will be accumulation of fluid in the second layer of the scalp. This is called caput succedaneum. Okay. So this caput succedaneum will be seen near the vertex of the skull. That is, this is the pointing part of the skull. And usually it will be bilateral. It will cross the opposite side. It will subside spontaneously within a week or two. Okay. And this actually, this fourth layer, it acts as a safety valve hematoma. Why it is called safety valve hematoma means, so sometimes if there is a fracture of the skull, so it will tear the dura mater and blood vessels, intracranial blood vessels. So the blood will slowly gravitate into the fourth layer and it will completely cover the skull, entire scalp. Okay. So that it acts as a safety valve hematoma. Okay. Then if sometimes if there is accumulation of CSF in the skull, then this condition is called cephalohydrosis. So next we'll go on to the fifth layer, that is the pericranium. So the pericranium will be loosely attached to the surface of the bone, but it is firmly attached to the sutures where the sutural ligament connect the pericranium to the endocranium. So cephalhematoma is nothing but the collection of blood beneath the pericranium. So it is nothing but a localized swelling due to vacuum delivery during childbirth. So sometimes the traumatic cephalohydrocele also will be accumulated beneath the pericranium during fracture of the skull. CSF will leak and accumulate under the pericranium. Okay. So in this point, you have to note the difference between the cephalhematoma and caput succinum. So cephalhematoma is accumulation of blood in the pericranium layer. It is limited to one side here. Okay, on only one side of the skull. But if you see the caput succinum will be on either side. Okay, and it is located in the presenting part of the head, that is the vertex. Okay. And usually the caput succinum, it crosses the suture line, but cephalhematoma will not cross the suture line. So the absorption of caput succinum is within a week, that is 3 to 4 days, but cephalhematoma few weeks to months. Okay. But caput succinum will automatically subside, but cephalhematoma needs supportive treatment. Okay. So you can see the picture here. This is the caput succinum crossing the suture line. This is a cephalhematoma. See, it is limited to one side of the skull. I think you are clear with this.